and welcome back to my channel. I'm Teresa. Thank you for joining me here today. One of the questions that I get asked an awful lot is what do you do with all your prints? What do you do with your scrap papers, the clean off papers? There's always little offcuts, bits and pieces. What do you do with it all? Do you waste it? Do you use it? And in some cases I reuse it, some cases I don't bother to keep it. You can't keep everything that you do. But today's project is going to be a good way of using up things like these, which are bits from clean-up papers, where you've rolled your brayer off or stamped off some paint, some excess paint. I've got offcuts from old prints that didn't really work very well, little bits and pieces. Again, sort of half-finished prints, clean-up papers, lots of things here that, in many ways are just sort of scrap, but they don't have to be. And I'm going to show you today how to turn all of this into something like this. So I'm going to clear this out of the way and I shall get started with showing you the process. I've dug through my drawer of prints and clean-up papers and all my scrap bits and pieces from jelly printing sessions, and I've just pulled out a whole section here. Now, as I say, a lot of these are clean-up papers rather than prints, so where I've cleaned off my brayer with different coloured paints, there are some prints here, prints that I've liked, offcuts from other prints that, where I've already cut bits out, used bits for things. And do tend to sort of save these multicoloured scraps because they do come in handy for collage projects. So got lots of those, little bits of print, got lots of clean-up pages here. And just thought that, this is going to be a fun way of using up some of these. So the ones that I'm most likely to use I sort of pulled up to the top, and I've got a whole load more underneath, but I don't need all of those. There is such a thing as too much choice. So just gather together a good selection. Choose colours and patterns and things that you like, things that you think might have interesting bits. Especially like these clean-up papers, because we're going to be cutting them into strips, you'll find that they end up with like little bands of colour on and they're going to look really interesting. So I've got all those ready. I've got a picture frame. This is one, I dug this out, it was in the bottom of my wardrobe. I had this and another one like it, which has long since gone. Both came from a charity shop at a thrift store, didn't pay much for them. But I liked them because they've got this really wide frame, so it's a nice area to decorate. Now, if you don't have a picture frame like this, you could make one. You could easily make something like this out of a couple of layers of sort of heavy-duty cardboard. And even sort of if you'd got like a small picture frame, you could attach a wider frame to the front of it. I'm sure you could get a hot glue gun and glue something on, but this is just a picture frame that I picked up from a charity shop. And I'm going to take out obviously the glass. We don't want that to get paint or glue or anything on it. And that leaves us with the picture frame. The reason it's got some felt on is I used to have these hanging on the wall, and because it had got the leg for if you had it stood up, it didn't hang straight, so I'd got this bit of felt glued on there. So I'll leave that on there for now. I'm not too bothered. That might come off at some point. So I've given this a wipe down with a damp cloth to sort of get any dust off it. I do want to give it a little bit of a light sanding around this middle bit because this raised bit here I'm going to paint. I thought because it is raised up, I'm going to collage on the flat surface, but this bit here, rather than trying to collage over a bump, I'm just going to paint that. And I'm going to paint it black because I thought that would be a nice way just to offset the bright colours that we've got. So I've just got a little bit of sandpaper here, and because this is it's quite a slick finish, just want to roughen that up a little bit in the hopes it'll take the gesso a bit better. So once I've done that, just want to dust off any loose bits. And I'm going to give that a coat or two of black gesso. Now, I might put black acrylic paint over the top. The gesso I think might just be enough on its own. And I am going to be finishing this with a sealer afterwards, so we should be all right with just the gesso. And I'm just going to paint over this. Doesn't matter if I go a little bit onto the flat of the frame, it's going to be covered with collage. And I'm also going to make sure I just get inside the recess there as well. So I'll do that and I'll be back when that's dry. So I've given the inside of the frame 2 coats of black gesso. I also decided to do around the outside edge as well. There were a few little chips and knocks in it, and it just tidied it up by painting it black. So I allowed that to dry, and I've given the surface, the front surface of the frame, a very light sanding, ready to start our collage. In order to do the collage, of course, we need to turn this pile of random pieces into small strips. So I'm going to get my paper trimmer and cut them into, I think 1 centimetre strips should be about right. I don't want them too narrow, but then again I don't want them too wide, and I'm looking at the sort of the proportions of my frame and thinking centimetre wide strips should be really nice. So if you haven't got a paper trimmer, you can use a ruler and a craft knife. They don't have to be perfect, you know, you could always, if they're a bit wonky, you could overlap them very slightly, but I'm just going to go ahead for speed's sake and trim a load of these into strips on my trimmer, and I'll be back to start with the collage. So I've got myself a selection of strips to get me started. Not sure how many I'm going to need, but I can always go and cut some more if I need to. And I'm going to glue these in place just with some decoupage medium. Now, my Mod Podge here, that's pretty much all gone, but I've still got some of this DecoArt Decopage. It's exactly the same thing. It's a glue sealer finish. You could just use a PVA glue if you don't have something like this, and then just go over it with a varnish when you've finished, and just to seal it in place. But I'm going to use this, and this is the matte finish. I thought about using a gloss finish, but I don't know, there's personal preference. I tend to prefer a matte finish myself. So I've got that, I've got myself a brush, and I'm just going to apply some of the glue to the front, and I'm going to start by this inner edge, because I figured if there's any odd bits to be trimmed, it's going to be easier to trim it from the outside. So I'm going to pick a piece here and place it like so. And then choose another piece. Trying not to be too picky about this. You know, it's one of those where you don't really want to overthink it too much. I'm looking for a nice sort of random multicoloured effect. So just push that down in place. The one thing I will say is all of the prints that I'm using today have been done with acrylic paint. You'd want something that is not going to reactivate by the moisture in the glue. So in the past I've done prints using things like Distress Oxide inks. They really will not be suitable because the ink will just reactivate and smear, and we don't want that. So make sure it's something that is sort of permanently fixed. When you get to an edge, like obviously here, I'm going to continue this one up here. It's going to need to be trimmed. So for now I'm just going to tear that, and when I've finished I'm going to trim with a knife. It's going to be easier to do all the trimming in one go. So I'm going to continue just laying more pieces alongside. I'm going to make sure that my joins are staggered, so we don't have any sort of, we don't want all the joins to be in a row, if you see what I mean. So I'm just going to pop this like that, so it sort of staggers from the previous one. And I'm going to continue until I have covered the entirety of my frame.
Wish that I could stay in this moment forever, so I can hold you in my arms. I will carry you on my shoulders as long as I'm able. Scare the monsters under your bed. Deep and abiding, liking for you is all I need. Until my heart gives in, I will do everything I can for you.
Cover the entire front of the frame. Need to let this dry, and then we can trim off the excess. And the easiest way to do that is going to be to flip it over and then run a knife along the edges and trim off the excess. So I'm just going to go and do that on my cutting mat. I don't want to ruin my table here, and I'll show you what that looks like when we've finished that stage. Once you've trimmed the excess off, it really just starts to look like almost a finished product. I do want to seal this. Want to make sure that this is completely dry. Even though it is dry enough for me to cut it, there's still a little bit of moisture in the paper there. So I'm just going to leave this for a little while, dry it off completely, and then I can go over it with another couple of coats of the decoupage varnish just to seal it in and sort of even it all out. And once I've done that, I shall be back to show it you finished, and hopefully I'll find a little picture to pop in there and we can see what it looks like as a finished frame. And here's our finished frame. I hope you agree it looks completely different once you've got something actually in the frame itself. This is just a greetings card actually that I'd got, and I just liked the fact that the image was in black and white and just really contrasted nicely against the colourful frame. Apologies for the glare of the ring light in the glass. There's not a lot I can do about that at the moment. But I hope you agree this is a fun project and a good way of using up those scraps, using up those clean-up papers, all those little bits and pieces that you don't know what to do. You could do this with scrapbook papers. You could just, paint some papers. If you've just got some paper, just spread some paint, dot some paint on, create your own pattern backgrounds if you don't do gel printing. But I know a lot of people always asking me, what do you do with the clean off papers? What do you do with these prints that you don't like so much? What do you do, just what do you do with all these bits and pieces? Well, this is a really fun way of creating a really nice piece of art using them. You could use this technique to cover a box, to cover like a file folder, lots of ideas for creating things just from little strips. I just think it really looks fun, and I'm going to have this downstairs, I think, pride of place on a shelf. I like the brightened colourful patterns that there are. When I sealed it all with the Mod Podge, I did also seal over the gesso around the edges just so it won't get knocked or scraped off. But that's it for today. So as always, if you enjoyed this, please leave me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. As always with my gel printing videos, I'll leave a link in the end card to a playlist where you can see them all. If you want some more inspiration, go and check that out. But if not, I shall see you again next week. Bye.